This week's focus, we've got 3 pieces to work on. And really we're thinking about this kind of long line of arm overhead down to the trunk. So believe it or not, we're gonna start on the forearm. It's great and easy access with a couple of the peanut and really addressing your ability to grip. Now, what's interesting is that most of your gripping power actually comes from these fingers. These are the long grippers. This is your power grip, but the long endurance grip is here. It's interesting that we actually have to hook grip when we're holding the barbell, and then the rest of these things just go for a ride. So what we see is that this lateral aspect, this deviation, this kind of extensor component is really important. So we're gonna work on that. And then we're just gonna take that right upstream into some overhead triceps work. So we'll lay down, put the arm into the context of this long line of this connective tissue, working on the triceps here. And then since we're just in the chain, we'll continue on with this lateral seam and go after the lats. So if we can focus on these 3 big pieces this week, you'll see that you can add in what you need to work on your body to make it feel better with some other kind of down regulation plug and play. But see if you can at least hit these 3 things, open up this lateral line and appreciate this as a contiguous connective chain. Enjoy. Addressing stiffness in the forearm musculature is easy to do and definitely a plus. When we have people who have problems on their elbows and wrists, we often forget the connecting tissues. What I've got here is a little bit of an elevated surface. This can be a couch, a chair, a bench, and then I've got a peanut and then a single lacrosse ball. And even if I were just to use my own weight, it's easy to be able to work and use the shape of the peanut to my advantage. So what we've got is just a couple minutes on the clock, and what we want to do is address stiffness in these musculatures and in this tissue system. And notice, I have a little bit of a wrist problem, but notice that I can also get my wrist off the bench or the counter in this position. I get my weight over here, and what I like about being a little bit lower is that it allows me to work on the wrist with a straight arm and a bent arm, which changes the dynamics a little bit. So here I'm working mainly on the extensors, and I just pushing and pulling, adding in and trying to get as much movement through this very, very tight tissue sheath as I can. So you can think about trying to grow the glove around some of the musculatures and stiffness and the soft tissues of the forearm just by trying to free up the circumferential fascia by addressing it as a complete system. So I'm moving my wrist in my available range, making sure that my fingers are working, and then I'm really going to be at the limits and the creativity of what it feels like I need to do. So for me, I like a lot of weight, I sink in, and then I just move a little bit back and forth. I try to roll through the little tunnel and the notches created by the actual peanut here. And the goal here is just to get as much work as I can in these extensors. I also can create a stack with another ball if I need, if I feel like I've got a certain area that needs a little bit of work. And of course I can just work on one side. If I only have a single ball, that'll work too. But I'll tell you that this peanut setup tool is a wonderful way to address stiffness in the tissue system, particularly in the extensors. Now, the anatomical position is hands by side, which unwraps the bones. So in this situation, my radius is crossed over my ulna, so the outside arm bone is crossed over the inside. And so if I were to work in this position, that would be fine. I just may not get everything that I'm after here. So again, I really prefer to work on this shape and this position. Got a couple minutes done. I'm going to flip to the other side. And in this position, you can see I have a little bit more wrist action. But again, I'll just settle in. I can even start at the elbow. What we'd rather you do is think about this as maybe not something that ever should be done at the gym unless you're feeling, whoa, I lost my grip today, or I was pumping out on the forearm. But our grip is constantly taxed as human beings, and we sometimes forget how easy it is to improve the efficiency of a system once that system becomes a little bit stiff. So all I'm doing is restoring sliding, and believe it or not, this is a feel-good mobilization. To roll my forearms on there, it feels like what I wish someone would do to me all the time. You know, if I'm like, just someone could just take care of my forearms. What you'll notice is that even things test better, like grip strength. And so again, what we believe is that a lot of times these forearms get really stiff, and if we're talking about a tissue system in the body that probably gets the least amount of love, it's certainly the forearms. And considering how robust the tissue system is, it's pretty remarkable that we get as few problems as we actually do, even whether it's the Quer veins or even up top. So feel free to get some big pressure and then just move around, and your goal is to try to collect 2 minutes aside. We're coming up on our 2-minute mark here. You can certainly extend this out, but we'd rather you have a dose and a response, and this could be something that you actually come back to quite often. So if you're suffering from anything that rhymes with carpal tunnel dysfunction or elbow pain, or you're stiff, or your hands are grippy, don't forget that opening up the tissue tunnels of your forearms can do a lot to improve your performance and make you feel better. This is a simple tricep mobilization, but the difference is we're going to try to bias this overhead position. So we've got some kind of ball or a supernova here, and what we're going to try to do is really focus on half of the triceps moving up to the armpit, but certainly feel free to go after it. We're going to try to get about 3 minutes aside here. What's nice about this is we're always trying to mobilize at the positions of restriction. And when we put the arm over the head, we are biasing the movement patterning into exposing the tissues into an overhead position. That's a shorthand for mobilized position restriction. So when I put the arm overhead, I'm going to find pieces and aspects of the tricep that were not stiff when I was in more of a kind of traditional front rack or bench or chaturanga shape. So arm overhead, and what's nice about the ball here is it allows me not to have my arm too jammed up. I can relax, I can add in a little bit of height through the finger if I want, and I can really take the insertion all the way up into the armpit. So this is still triceps, and we don't think of it that, but I can have a lot of dysfunction where the arm is connecting to the body, and that can drive a lot of lost capacity and range of motion. So notice that I'm spending a lot of time weaving the hand back and forth. I certainly can go short lever any time on this thing if I want, but this long lever shape is a wonderful position to get real pressure through the triceps. And then I just work down a little bit. So now I can get real meat and pressure between kind of making a shoulder sandwich through this thing. I'm just laying on one of our mush novas here, but even a peanut system would work just fine. So it's easy for me to get the kind of pressure I'm after and to be able to sink in obliquely through the soft tissues. So I'm just coming in as an angle here. Instead of always attacking straight down in sort of these classic planes, I'm able to shear and to think about restoring how the triceps is articulating on this aspect of the compartment of the back of the arm. So instead of just thinking, hey, I'm always coming in straight, I'm able to come in from the side and find areas that maybe take my breath away, and also start to emphasize the relationship between front of the arm and back of the arm, and the fact that these things are neighbors. And so when I improve the neighborhood, I oftentimes will see improvements in function that exceed sort of classic stretching or classic mobilizations, because we're able to change directly and greatly what's going on. And notice that I'm snapping back and forth here, so I'm going to change my body angle a little bit and then see if I can really sit down and put some real pressure. And I can modulate that easily by turning on my stomach, turning the palm up, and then doing a good old-fashioned contract, relax. So big breath in, hold for 4, exhale for 8. See if I can soften that ropey fibrotic tissue up. And one of the things we were after is that if you find that you're capturing pieces that seem a little bit more fibrotic, a little bit ropier than you intend, that's a good idea that you've found a tissue restriction or make improvement. So that's 3 minutes on that side. Man, time flies when you're having, fun. So here I am. I've got to roll on to this other side. I'm starting high up. I've got other mobilizations through the triceps. I can certainly go long here, but I just find that this is not as effective position. But what's nice is taking the ball high into the armpit here, rolling onto the side, still biasing this overhead position, and I'm trying to address what's happening with the insertion there. So can I make some change where that long head of the triceps is crossing into the shoulder and then relating downstream. And again, you should feel free that if you like the impact of a little bit different tool here, feel free to zhuzh that up yourself. I'm just going to stick with the ball because I feel like I can get the kind of weight and impact that I'm after. 3 minutes is sufficient time per arm to add in as a simple mobilization. If you're particularly sore, Sometimes you'll see that in movements like pull-ups, your triceps get sore, which is really shocking, but it shouldn't be given that the triceps is crossing the shoulder joint here. So again, rolling side to side, I can get up on that side even and sneak in that lateral load and then adding the rotation and continue to move. And if I feel stiff, I'll stop, contract, relax and sink into the bottom. Hang out. And this is taking my breath away right now. And you'll notice what I've done is basically pinned the triceps and the insertion of that lateral aspect on the humerus here. And I'm just getting amazing work, contract and relaxing, and things that I wouldn't get if I was just doing a classic tissue stretch. So what we want to be thinking is, hey, how can I desensitize, restore how these tissue systems are sliding? Can I improve their nature so they're not so stiff and fibrotic? And I'm spending a lot of time in what we call a position of emphasis. So it's nice work in a position that I'm actually trying to improve. So if you want to tack and floss, knock yourself out. Again, it's easy to make a little sandwich here and then add that motion in. Whew. I don't know what's going on with my left arm, but I'm sore today. So just pushing and pulling, causing a little bit of a reaction here. So I stop, take a breath, contract into the ball, build that end range isometric in this position of emphasis, relax and sink in until I can take more weight on it. And suddenly I can contract, relax effortlessly there. So I move on, keep hunting. And the goal here, again, is to try to get a dose and a response. And if we noodle on these tissues a little bit at a time, especially after we've just used them, it's a wonderful way to tie in your mobilization to the movements that you just did. And that is a nice, tidy little couplet. Did something with my arms that involved my triceps and pushing, maybe in the overhead position. I finished the session with a little bit of mobilization. In this side lateral seam mobilization, we're going to take on kind of the high triceps as it comes into the shoulder, a little bit of the armpit, and then the chest wall. So an easy demarcation is that we're going to spend 1 minute on each one of these parts. That's 3 minutes on both sides, so quick 6-minute. You're going to need a ball or a roller in this. So I like the roller here. Just gives me a little bit different input, but don't be afraid to play around with the ball either. So unlike the lat, we're much higher up on the armpit. So I'm going to start in this mid-range because it ties the two together, then I'll go up and down. So I've got a minute on the clock, and what I'm going to do is try to scrub and see if I can't soften and just put some input into this armpit. And notice that my arm goes over my head into this position, and this really loads this tissue into a position where it starts to become on tension. Here I have less bite, but in this position, in this lateral seam, is really where I'm seeing the good work to be done. So I'm just going to roll side to side. I can scrub back and forth and reach, but all I'm going to do is just sneak around, working my way north a little bit, and try to pull into the armpit. You can actually feel what feels like your subscap there, and my job is to try to pull and push and pull and push and just keep making these little figure eights. So I pull backwards and I roll over the top and I keep just figure eighting back and forth. And as I come up onto a minute into this armpit, you realize there's a lot of work to be done. But I want to think about improving this system here. So feel free to freestyle as you need, but we're going to try to cover some distance. So notice what I'm doing here with my arm. I'm making some figure eights or some shallow ovals. And what I'm trying to do is take this lateral seam up into the long head of the triceps. So I only have a minute here, and I want to just see if I can trap that ropiness of the triceps where it crosses the shoulder into the arm. And you can see that I'm pinning that triceps down, and I go back and forth. And oftentimes when we're looking at triceps or we're looking at shoulder function and overhead, we fail to appreciate the role of the triceps, especially at the top of the shoulder. So just another 15 seconds here, push and pull and scrub, but we probably just don't want to go up and down this way. That's probably not going to get what we're after. We're going to try to roll and see if we can get some real weight into this really powerful tissue, which is highly, highly resistant to change because it's so powerful and thick. Then I'm going to take this down for the last minute, and I'm going to go right into the chest wall here. So here's my nipple, and what I want to do is see if I can actually roll onto the side of the chest and scrub back and forth a little bit. I can make that pull and push. I'm going to go a little slower because there's not a lot of meat here, but this is the area where the serratus is coming in and attaching to the scapula. So you have a big scapular stabilizer mover rotator. It's one of the part of the upward rotating couplet of like levator, scapula, and serratus. They work as a force couple here. And what we're trying to do is see if we can't just free up and put some input into that serratus. So I can feel like I can add this rotation and smear back and forth, but just a quick minute on that chest wall. And what you'll see is that that takes us up into a reasonable dose where I've spent 3 solid, detailed focus minutes trying to improve how this arm is working through this area. So we'll switch sides here. We'll do the same thing, and we'll start again in the middle. So what's nice about this is that if we work on this as a system, over 3 minutes we can get a lot of change, but we don't have to dwell here forever and ever. So arm up into the meat of the armpit, sort of where I left off with some of the other mobilizations into the lat, but feel free to push and pull and roll back and forth. So add that rotation in, see if you can't shear, get a little bit of motion, and then feel free to take that up a little bit further. Again, one of the things that's miraculous about this is we feel like we can actually get in to some of the deep musculatures of the armpit here, and that will take us right into the triceps so that I'm able to get into this triceps effectively, pushing and pulling, working my way up into this thick, powerful arm musculature that becomes a crucial component of stabilizing, moving the shoulder. And I'm going to pull one direction and push the other direction. If the roller is too beefy, feel free to make it a little bit smaller with a ball here. That would work just as well. And you'll see that you can get 2 minutes down the rabbit hole, no problem. And then we're going to take that last minute, again, work on this chest wall. So somewhere lateral to the nipple. It's not the lat, but I want to definitely try to get up onto the chest wall and push and pull that tissue. I can change my arm position if I need, but I want to feel like I can get into this corner between the side of the chest and the lat. This interface here of a quick push and pull. And it doesn't take much input here to just free up how those tissues are sliding and improve my ability to create rotation through the scapula and upward rotation. That's serratus is the boxer muscle, and it rarely gets the input and the dedication and attention that it needs. So the easy way to address it is, instead of just mobilizing serratus, let's go ahead and apply it to this greater shoulder functionality. So you've got 3 target areas: side of the chest, into the armpit a little bit, and into the top of the triceps. That's 3 quick minutes each side.